All right. Welcome back, I should say, folks, to the LA Sparks 365 Network, your 24/7 365 comprehensive home for the WNBA and your Los Dos, two-time WNBA champion Los Angeles Sparks, making our first in-game substitution in quite some time again, folks. Not really surprised, but it has happened again, where, again, for some reason, Chris is having problems getting into our Hangouts. Once more, so we're trying to get those problems fixed, hopefully sometime soon, but it just hasn't happened yet. So we have replaced Sparks Fan with the two-man show of record that we like to call the guys with the petition, alongside Chris and Mancy again, folks, via Apple's FaceTime from the Earnhardt Studios in Anaheim, California. Yours truly, Cal McClure, back here from Studio 171 in San Diego. Chris, you think, man, that the time off would actually help us in a way, but not the case again tonight, where we've come back, yeah, but of course, technical problems have always seemed to sideline the number one show on the network. So with that, we'll just talk random WNBA and women's basketball stuff, man. So with that, man, other than the technical problems, man, how's it been going tonight?
Nothing much. Just hanging here. Just tweeting right now.
Which is no surprise. You do that all the time. That's why you're always lost whenever I talk to you about stuff on the show. But with that, folks, there's not been a whole lot really discussed tonight. We kind of made this, last minute here because we thought we could get Chris back into the hangout for this one, but that just really hasn't really worked in the past couple of days, or hasn't worked tonight for some reason. So with that, Chris, we'll just kind of hang. Again, folks, not a lot really much to get to here on the Petition Show. We're just hanging and dealing with a Twitter war between Chris, Shorty, Crystal, and the network again, as Chris apparently got his wallet jacked, as he can't get in here, folks. And just seems like I even told this to Chris even beforehand, and he agreed with me too. It's that, whenever that, like, we're ready to go for something, but something always happens to Chris and not to me. It should be the other way around, but that just hasn't really happened. Probably because he's still paying his dues for that flop prediction in the postseason earlier, or last year, with picking the Sparks to go all the way to the WNBA Finals. But with that, folks, I guess we could talk about a pretty awesome story that's occurred involving me at the college basketball ranks over here in San Diego at the Division II level at Point Loma Nazarene University. As you folks may know, I've been hired and I've been doing the baseball game broadcast for PLNU, Point Loma Nazarene University in San Diego, and spent some time, of course, watching the basketball games, of course, over the past few months. And Chris, I always say a lot that, I'm so blessed to do what I do, man. And, whenever, man, sometimes there's an old saying, Chris, that, sometimes one door closes, another door opens right away. But Chris, more so with me, man, it's been, more and more doors opening every now and then, man. So are you at all? Are you a bit happy, or Chris? Normally, man, let me just ask you this: whenever you see me post stuff, either from my job site or things I'm doing, does it get you excited at all to see, to see that one of your, close friends is having so much success at such a young age? Or kind of, what is your thought process, I guess, when you see me, posting stuff about what's going on during the week? Or, give me your honest opinion, man, because I really haven't gotten too far in depth about that, I guess. But what are your thoughts, though, about seeing that stuff?
Just great and excited.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, of course, I get excited too whenever I can, do my true passion and stuff like that. But folks, I got a really, really good story to tell you, folks, that happened last year and is sort of come full circle in a pretty small fashion. And as you folks know, of course, we sit here on the Petition Show most times to talk about other things that are happening either with the Sparks, with the W, and in this case tonight, folks, we're talking women's hoops, just in general at this point in time. And at this point, folks, let me go back to an instance of something that came up to me last year in November. Now, as you folks don't know, but the reason why I got the gig at Point Loma is a close friend of mine named Chris Davis. He's not the baseball player for the Orioles. He's a friend of mine that's just got the same name as Chris. But he is the PA guy, the public address announcer for the Point Loma Sea Lion baseball, basketball, and soccer teams at Point Loma. So we had gone to tour Qualcomm Stadium because I was going to be doing a football game for the Aztecs, doing spotting and stats for a game, and I needed to kind of find my way to the press box when I got to Qualcomm. And then we had gone to enjoy lunch, and we had talked about sports because we're both huge sports fans and stuff like that. And Chris had told me, he said, "Yeah, we kind of have to get going. I got a women's hoops game at PLNU today." And I asked, said, "Hey, I mean, I don't have anything else to do. Do you mind if I go with you?" He said, "Of course. Why not?" So he let me tag along and stuff like that. So we'd gone to the game and stuff. So with it being the Point Loma game, it was also the first home game for the Sea Lions at home. They had played 2 games on the road against Cal Poly Pomona and CSU Dominguez Hills. So, of course, the first game, you don't know the names of the roster. That's pretty evident. You don't know anyone unless you've done pregame research. So I was hanging out with him before the game, and we were at the scores table. So we got the names from the opposing team, which is a new school, Bethesda University out of Anaheim, very small school. We had played them. So we got the names from them. So as we make our way to the Point Loma bench area, during warm-ups, the coaches aren't there. So we're kind of, doing one of these like, okay, who are we supposed to talk to? We're looking over there. We're like lost dogs. We're looking around for someone to kind of help us out. So we're standing there mulling around what to do. And then to our surprise, a player comes up to us. And, she notices that we're standing there looking around and stuff. So she asks if she can help. So Chris and her talked for a few minutes. They were getting the names down and stuff. So I left, as a thing of professionalism, again, to leave, to let them take care of their business. So as I came back and stuff, because I felt it was appropriate to join them again. And, again, I really wasn't expecting much, but as I got back there, the player's nice enough to extend the handshake out and say, "Hey, my name's Jessica Scorza. Pleasure to meet you. Thanks for coming out and stuff." So that was sort of something that stuck to me initially. And I know if Chris is going to watch this, he knows, a few things off the chart here. So I think it was sort of that kind of, here it's it's an athlete either way, college or pro again, that, step aside from pregame warmups to help out the media. That normally doesn't happen unless, you get the right athlete at the right place, right time. So, that's where I got attached. I'll admit it right here and now and stuff like that. So going on and sort of going ahead a bit here, and I'm not going to try to make this too long here. We are on a bit of a time frame here. So in either case, Point Loma would end up losing that game that night because of missed free throws. And Jessica rarely, and at least what I've been told over the season, is she rarely misses free throws. And she had missed a couple of big ones towards the end of the game, along with her teammates and stuff. But something that I have never recalled seeing any athlete do, whether they won the game or lost, after the handshakes ended and on my way out of the gym, she was, she had enough, mental toughness to go and, take a ball from the warm-up rack and went out with her assistant coach folks and shot free throws for 30 minutes at least, maybe 10, 20, maybe I'm over-exaggerating, but took the time, though, to put in the extra effort and work after a game. And again, I don't think I've ever seen an athlete, any level, win or lose, put in any extra effort after winning or losing a game like she did that night. And when I did see that, that gave her more points on my scoreboard, because I don't think most athletes would take that time after playing a hard 40 or 60 minutes and either winning or losing and putting in that extra effort to improve their game. And that's just something that stuck. And that's what kind of made me a big fan was, yeah, she lost, but it wasn't a case of her losing, being upset, frustrated with herself, but instead going out there and working on what went wrong for her in that game. And Chris, as I bring you back in, man, as we're kind of going in a bit of story time here, but Chris, I think that, yes, it's a college athlete, Chris, but again, man, your entire time watching sports, being a huge fan, Chris, do you kind of ever expect an athlete, win or lose, to put in extra time and effort, like an extra practice after playing a game when they just played 40, 60 minutes or played 9 innings of baseball, Chris? Do you really expect, though, man, that you'd see an athlete at any sort of level, high school, college, pros, put in that extra time and effort to improve their game even after they played a game and battled their heart out?
No, I'm just surprised.
Yeah, and yes, I was generally surprised to see that firsthand. So that's sort of where the story begins, is back in November. And then as time has gone on, folks, when I've been on campus at Point Loma, so I'll just tell you this story as well. So with our first baseball game of the season, we had one small technical fault on our broadcast. So I had told the tech team, hey, try your best to get it fixed. I'll be back. So this is, again, folks, it just seems like, I mean, Chris, you and I talk about irony so much in regards to number sequences, to people that look like our favorite players, Chris. But I'll tell you what, man, I think this is like this true irony here, man, that as I'm going to grab a soda, she comes walking past me. And again, as I've told Chris Davis numerous times, it's tough to recognize the student athletes on campus when they're not wearing game attire, because you're so used to seeing them, hair in ponytails or buns, warm-up tees and shorts on and stuff. But when you see them in like regular attire, it's different. So I knew it was her, though. So I just, I gave her enough time to say good luck. She was kind of going past the stadium to go to a next class. So everything else included with that story. And sadly, folks, as much as it's been fun to have, rubbed shoulders with another tremendous athlete, that's got, a tremendous personality, hard work, mental toughness, great person to be around. It is her senior year. She played her final home game back in February, and everything else included. So, folks, in case you're wondering here, all this I just talked about, folks, was a piece I wrote. This was a blog story I wrote on calamac.wix.com/calamac sports that I wrote sort of in a way to, for one deal, add on to, the teams I cover, but also it was appropriate, though, I think, to write the story because it was her final home game. And also, it's an athlete that I've become attached to because there's two sides to her that you don't get from most athletes at any level. And that is, you get the on-court play. You get the tough defense, the three-point shooting, so on and so forth. But you also, though, get you get every ounce of common courtesy, kindness, true professionalism, respect, and class. And Chris, I know, man, that when you probably saw that piece that I wrote, man, that I basically have taken my notes from here, man, overall thoughts about reading that story, if you even did skim across it, man, about Chris, how one athlete can sort of dictate, how you perceive other athletes in other sports, Chris, in regards to how they treat not only their teammates, Chris, but also treat average people like myself, Chris Davis, and the other people that work at Point Loma, Chris. Your thoughts about that story that I wrote, Chris, because we'll get to, man, it pretty much went viral afterwards.
Just very great article and everything.
Yeah, probably one of the better ones I've written, Chris, because, again, I even told this to my folks a couple nights ago, Chris, was, when you meet these athletes, Chris, that aren't all about themselves, that most athletes, not all, Chris, but most athletes are that way at every level. They're all full of themselves, and they think that they're on top of the world. They can give 2 cents, they can really care less about the fans that support them or what on so on and so forth. And Chris, I know that Jessica's in college and she's at a religious program, but Chris, at the same time, though, it's a different sort of athlete. And Chris, that's one reason why I told my dad that I love women's basketball, because Chris, they're the only true athletes at every level that can really show you both sides of the coin. They can show you that they're, yes, a tremendous athlete, but also, Chris, can show you that they're a regular human being like us two guys are, where they actually have personalities. They can talk to people on Twitter, or in Jessica's case, as we'll get to next, Chris, and that's, make a kid's dream and make a kid's weekend, basically, by doing what she did, as we'll get to next, Chris. So I guess, man, what are your thoughts, though, about that, is about those sort of athletes, Chris, that can show you both sides of a story. They can show you their on-court game or their on-field play, Chris, but also can show that they're also human and humble, like most athletes should be and need to be.
Just very great and everything.
And now, folks, as we'll get to part 2 now of this featured story here, and again, you folks can check out the blog pieces on calamac.wix.com. And Chris, there's no denying, man, that I've sort of blown up Instagram with sunset photos from Point Loma, Chris. And I do it, man, not to piss off my friends that live on the East Coast, like my uncle who lives in Connecticut, who's a huge UConn fan, man. But, Chris, when you have that view, though, you know, when you're at Point Loma every time, man, and, Chris, as part two goes here, there are, folks, a lot of emotions that do go through me when I do step foot on campus because, Chris, as I mentioned, man, you know, I'm around the general public, man, basically 5 days out of the week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. With my job, Chris, and I guess with the sunset photos you guys get all the time. But Chris, before we let you get out of here for the night, because I know you got some stuff to do, man. Folks, in a nutshell here, real quick. So it's become superstitious, folks, for me to take those photos of the sunsets at Point Loma Nazarene University because it's just something that I fell in love with, and I love the sunset. You know, it kind of puts me at peace for once. So anyway, folks, so as I finish up doing that, I walk into the gym basically, and I'm, you know, getting stuff done and stuff. And then I hear my name getting called. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, Chris isn't at the table right now, so who could possibly be calling me? It's Jessica coming over to me, folks, who somehow, some way, according to what Chris told me, he sent the link to her to the blog piece I wrote. She came over, folks, and gave me a tremendous ovation. She was so kind enough to come over, and she had come over to the table while I was finishing up stuff. And basically said, Callan, I got to give you a huge hug because I read the story you wrote, and I can't thank you enough for writing that story about me because, you know, of course, with the D2 school folks, you don't get a whole lot of publicity at these Division II schools in the newspaper, on the web, on here, I guess you can sort of say. So in that case, you know, I was really, folks, taken back. And I know that if Chris Davis was to watch this, he would say, oh, yeah, I know that. You can keep going. But folks, again, you know, this all sort of culminates to why I always use hashtags of so blessed and I love my job because, folks, this is an instance of building a relationship with somebody, but showing your appreciation for them, folks. There was a great article written by Leah Swift, who writes my school newsletter, who back in January wrote a full-length success story about myself, about how important it is for you, sort of as a motivational type of story, folks. The story was written about how important it is for you to build relationships in the field of work you're going into, but also showing your appreciation for the opportunities you're given by other people that will take the time, like Candace Parker, like Candace Wiggins, like Jessica Escorza, to take the time out of their day to either do an interview with you or they'll take time out of their pregame warm-ups to help out the media. So that is a reason I think that this is sort of a big deal a little bit because, for one deal, folks, there is no way for me to track how many people or who reads the stuff I write on my site because there's no analytics involved on this. I basically, folks, just write not for my health, folks, but just to write as a freedom of expression because I always said if I wasn't a sports announcer or an announcer, I would be a writer because I always loved English and I love writing stories like this. And I have more fun writing stories about athletes like Jessica Escorza because you rarely find athletes like her that would step away from a game or pregame warm-ups of a big game to help out someone like me. So getting back on track, folks, if you may recall or not, but again, that was the first story I wrote about an athlete specifically other than the ones I wrote about Parker and Wiggins. So again, I'm getting set up for the game, you know, because I was doing stats for Chris because he needed some help doing stats for that game we were working against Notre Dame Dana Mir. So I was finishing up stuff, and I heard my name getting called. And again, Chris was already there, but he wasn't at the scores table. I saw his notepad and his tablet there. And I'm hearing my name getting called. I'm thinking, okay, Chris isn't here, so who could possibly be calling me? And it was Jessica walking over. Again, this is like a flashback, folks, to the first part of my story back in November, again, where she sort of walked over without us knowing, to help us out with the team roster. It was literally cruel irony almost that it happened again. But again, she came over, folks, again, breaking away from pregame warmups again. And she gave me her trademark smile, and also, folks, gave me a huge hug, because Chris, without me knowing, and I've thanked him repetitively, and I'm buying him breakfast or dinner when we go to the Big West Tournament on Friday, folks. He had sent Jessica the link to the story that I wrote. Out of the generosity of his heart to at least acknowledge the fact that, like, hey Jess, look, you made a pretty good impression on one of my colleagues. Check out the story he wrote about you. And as Jessica kept talking to me, folks, she basically said that her entire family grabbed a hold of the story, and they said that they read the story, they loved it, they appreciate, folks, and they said it was so thoughtful for me to have written the story. They sent the story to family across San Diego, across Arizona, folks, all the way back to Jessica's hometown, folks, of South Riding, Virginia. I mean, that's how far it went with that story. So we talked for maybe about 5 minutes or so. And we just basically were exchanging praise, because, I said, Jess, I thank you dearly for reading it. That makes me feel very good that someone read the story. But also, I also, wanted to say thanks for what he did, though, back at the first game, though, with, helping out Chris with the names in the roster, and where Jess, in her way, said, that yes, thank you. No, but she said, no, thank you for writing the story, for writing that story, because it's one of the best ones I've ever read about myself, and I've been, I was, basically, a very good player in high school and at Warford College before I came to Loma. And I can't thank you enough for writing that story. It was, one of the better ones that I read. So, as you folks may have caught, normally before the game, when Point Loma's not warming up, the staff from the scores table will go and play horse, or will go and play horse. And I was killed by our veteran scorekeeper Charles twice. He killed me twice with 2 3-pointers going out of bounds, and I airballed all 3. So after that finished up, as I normally do, I'll look up, and the southwest doors of the gym open up, and here comes the team coming in for pregame warmups. And of course, she's first one down, first one to enter. And I've always said, though, whenever, because I'll be down there during pregame warmups, and I'll be dishing out the balls for pregame warmups. And as soon as I see Jess and she smiles at me, in my head I tell her, "Here you go, Jess. Now go do what you do best." And that's go out there and ball. And you go out there and ball. So following that, I had gone upstairs to the concession stand to grab a soda and Snickers bar. So as I'm waiting in line, this lady stops me, and she kind of gives me that look, like, I know you from somewhere, can't think of the name though. So she asked, "Can I get your name real quick, sir?" And I said, "Yeah, my name's Callan." And she says, "Oh, I am so excited to meet you. My name is so-and-so. I'm Jessica's mom." And Jess had warned me, my mom's coming tonight because it's my last home game. So if she stops you, she's going to talk your ear off. And sure enough, Jessica was right. But again, folks, that's something though that's going to stick with me though, is because, not only did I make the athlete feel good, I made the family feel good. I mean, that's the most important thing out of this whole thing, folks, is not only was the player happy with the story, but as was the family. And that's the most important thing, folks, was mom and dad and her brothers were happy about the story. They loved it so much. I mean, and so anyway, back to Jess's mom. So we talked for maybe 10 minutes, I think, because, I had gotten, my stuff and everything else included. And so, she introduced herself. She gave me a hug and stuff. And she said, "Callan, your story was so amazing to read that you made me choke up a bit of how great that story was." And that really made me feel, and that one really made me feel good, folks, to get that feedback again, because again, as I said, not only was the athlete or the subject happy about the story, as was the more important people, which was the family, was of course happy about that story, reading that as well. So that stayed with me, folks. So as halftime started, I ended up going over and meeting Jessica's family, her mom and dad, her brother Matt, and her longtime friend, folks, and current Delaware basketball player Kelsey Buchanan, who has known Jess since they were, very young kids, but also, folks, in a tie that and also in a connection with the WNBA, Kelsey is a former teammate of Elena Deladon, and all I could hear, folks, from mom and dad and her brother, more so was, we can't thank you enough for writing that story. I mean, we've printed it out, we've shared it with the family in Phoenix, in South Riding. We've shared it. We really can't, say much else other than thank you for writing this story, because, you're the first one, to really sort of, write something good about our daughter. But also, there was other things that they said, though, that, really stayed with me. And I'm so thankful that they read that. And also, their gratitude and appreciation was off the chart. And also, it was cool, though, to meet Kelsey, who's a former teammate of Elena Deladon and stuff like that. So anyway, after the game, Point Loma would win the game, by the way, 85-51 over Notre Dame Dana Mir. So in between their game and the men's game starting, I had gone and went back and talked to Jessica again for about 5 minutes. Again, I didn't want to keep her too long. Again, I know she wanted to go and celebrate with her family and friends and stuff, so I didn't want to keep her too long. But I kept her enough and basically just talked again about, thanking her again for reading the story, sharing it with the family and friends, and everything else included. And again, and she just basically said again, I adored it. I loved it. It was so thoughtful, creative of you to write the story. And folks, I still feel this way. And if you follow me on Instagram, folks, you saw the photo I posted with Jess. Those are the kind of days, ladies and gentlemen, at least in my case, that you wish you could just go back and revisit. I mean, I feel like that with certain days, and outside of my birthday and Christmas, there's 3 days that I really look forward to. And that's September 26th, when I got to interview Candace Parker, October 10th, when I interviewed Candace Wiggins, and then, of course, now February 26th, where one of the most down-to-earth athletes I've ever met, that I've become very good friends with, again, out of, of course, what she did the first time, but of course, this time around again, she read the story, read it, loved it, admired it, cherished it, and then shared with the family, with her family. Of course, is a point in time where I kind of wish Thursday, folks, could be like my Snapchat story, where I could just go back and replay that day over again for, just one more time, because it was such a great day for me, for my website, and also, folks, for, a good friend of mine as well, in Jessica Escorza. And folks, I can't really still express, how thankful, grateful I am that Jess and her family took the time to not only read it, but of course, share the story. And of course, folks, they are the first people, and I've written 11 stories on my site, but they're the first people to tell me that they've read a piece that I've written on my site. And of course, I've had plenty of feedback on broadcasts or shows like this, but never before Thursday, the 26th of February, had I had anyone tell me about feedback that I had about something that I wrote. And that's a big confidence booster for me going forward, if in fact I do pursue both broadcasting and journalism. So in closing, folks, again, she was kind of, she was so kind, like always, to take a photo with me after the game. And she did tell me, that would not be the last time I would see her on campus. I've been away from Point Loma because the baseball team's been on the road for the past, it's on the road until the 27th, so I haven't really got a chance to get back on campus yet. And she said, for sure, I'm definitely going to see you again. Don't think you're not going to, because you will see me again sometime soon. So, folks, I guess I can kind of wrap up here before we kind of go a bit more on this. There's an old saying, I think, that we all sort of can take to heart, that, the faces fade as the years go by. And if in fact when Jess does exit my life, perhaps, or whenever Parker and Wiggins can't, or whenever Parker and Wiggins do leave my life too. But I think with Jess, though, the thing I'm going to remember, though, most about her as the years do go by is the 5 core values that she has that we wished all athletes at every level had to not just them, their teammates and their coaches, but to everyone. And that is common courtesy, kindness, professionalism, respect, and class. And again, folks, really can't, I still really can't thank Jessica and her family enough for reading the story. Again, folks, there's certain, yes, there are certain things that stick with me, that do stick with me. And that is the three great athletes that I've made tremendous relationships with, either over Facebook and Twitter or Instagram or in person. And I can't really say enough about this tremendous experience. Again, I know that as Chris Davis was just messaging me on Facebook about the basketball tournament working, and I'm probably going to send him the link over. But I'm sure that if Chris watches this, he's going to say, "Yeah, I've heard this a million times, dude. Calm the waters down a bit. Ease off on this." But I can't really do that. I mean, I'm going to be on my high horse and be on cloud nine, because as my bio reads on my website, not many people know what their future's what their future holds, let alone, folks, their future of what their future's going to be, folks, at age 4. I mean, I wanted to be a broadcaster when I was 4 years old. I mean, that's why I cherish every athlete I get an autograph from, or either I interview an athlete or write a story on, because it's something that I've always wanted to do, and that's being around athletes, whether it's being around athletes or doing what I do best. And that's why I've been this way for a while, and I know that most people, and I know that some people would say, okay, dude, it happened last month, calm down, there's more things coming up, there's more things to talk about. But folks, I can't do that. I'm being completely blunt, honest, as I just can't do that, because to be able to work for, folks, to be able to do all this stuff, 2 radio shows covering 5 different teams, building, a tremendous channel for women's basketball on YouTube, and being able to, to announce, do hockey, indoor soccer, baseball, women's basketball, soon to be arena football. I mean, that's why, folks, I always say I'm so blessed and I love my job, because to be able to do what I've done at age 20, it keeps me up at night. It really does, folks, that I've been able to do all this stuff at such a young age. It's baffling. It's frightening at times, and I'm doing it at such a young age too. But also, folks, it's been so rewarding, though. And, I can't, and I don't think, folks, I can really go too much longer without really thanking my tremendous support staff at my school up in LA, which is Alex, Jay, and Leah, that they have been able to, that they, have grasped, that they've grasped all of this together. And also, folks, I mean, I don't think I can really go too much further though, without really, saying that again, is, the support team that I have up at RRF, which is Recording Radio and Film Connection in Los Angeles. They were the ones that got me that spot doing the basketball tournament back in December. I did those 32 games in 3 days for the Cube during that time of the year. So again, folks, I mean, it's been phenomenal. I mean, I know that I should probably move on from here, but folks, frankly, why should I? I mean, I don't. I mean, most people can only sort of envision or imagine being in my shoes. To be able to, interview 2 professional athletes for your first 2 interviews as a broadcaster, and to write a good story about a college athlete, and the athlete and her family admire the story so much. I mean, yeah, you're going to be on cloud 9, and you're going to be talking about it nonstop, for however long. I mean, folks, I still talk about my interviews with Parker and Wiggins, and that was well over, that was months ago, back last year in September and October, and I still talk about them because they are career-defining moments for me. I mean, that's why I always articulate and always talk about those interviews and talking about writing the story because, you know, kind of going back again, folks, to it's something, though, that has sort of made me successful, folks, again, is building those relationships with the people in your industry. It just so happens to be that I'm doing it with athletes, but also the folks that you that you also show the appreciation to them because they're giving up their hard-earned time. They're taking time out of their busy schedules to do interviews with you or whatever it may be, folks. And I think that's why I've been so successful, again, is building those relationships, building them up from square one, forming them and keeping them, but also, though, folks, giving them what they deserve, and that is giving them, a thank you or a tweet saying, thank you so much for doing this, or, whatever it may be, folks. And that's why I always marvel about these three people, folks, because again, two of them that are pro athletes took the time out of their busy schedules, folks, to do an interview with someone who's not a professional broadcaster. Folks, I say a lot, Parker and Wiggins, folks, didn't have to do these interviews with me. Jessica Escorza and her family didn't have to read the story I wrote, but they did it, though, because of how I formed those relationships with them. Again, either over social media, via text, email, whatever it may be, folks. But again, it's so important, though, as I get ready to sign off here, folks, again, for the future people out there going into the work field, whether they're going to be doing my job or whatever you set your mind to, build those connections, build those relationships, keep them, but also show your gratitude, show your appreciation to them, to these people that come into your life that take the time out of their day to do something for you. That's why I think, folks, I've had so much success so far. Again, I'm not bragging, but I'm just saying that is what has made me so successful. Again, is you have to understand that it's so important to build relationships with the people in your work field, whether it's, athletes or other broadcasters. That's why on my LinkedIn page, I have basically added every announcer you can think of. Because again, it's important, though, that you build these relationships, you build them, you keep them, and you show your appreciation for them whenever they do stuff for you. And again, that's why I've always have thanked Parker and Wiggins and Jessica so much. Folks, I think I've thanked Chris Davis more times than maybe the law should allow because, folks, honestly, if Chris doesn't show Jessica the link, how am I supposed to know if she even read the thing in the first place? That's what I've been told, though, folks, after the game was, I asked before we took the post to Jess, how did you find the blog beforehand? And she told me, oh, Chris sent it to me. And I thought to myself, okay, thanks a lot. I'll thank him. And folks, I think I thanked Chris at least 5 times via text, 5 times via Facebook. And again, I just said, and I told him, I know I've said this to you, man, but thank you so much for showing her the story, because if you wouldn't have done that, I wouldn't have had no way of knowing if she read the thing in the first place. But again, it goes back, though, to the point I've, hit up the driving range here, folks, again, is showing your appreciation. And I know I did it plenty of times to Chris Davis, but that is why, though, folks, I'm that way, because again, Candace Parker, Candace Wiggins, those two phenomenal friends of mine didn't have to take 40 minutes to an hour out of their time to do an interview with me for school. I could have asked someone else to do it, but I went to them and they came to me and said, yes, you got it. I'll do it for you. Absolutely. No questions asked. And Jessica didn't have to read the story, and if Chris Davis, didn't, care about the story, he wouldn't have sent her the link to the story. But he knows that, that Jessica, that her personality in games struck me the first game I went to with him back in November. He knows that, he knows that I was trying to form, a connection with her after game one. And, And he knew that. And if Chris didn't care about that, he wouldn't have sent her the link in the first place to that story. But in any case, folks, if you guys have not read my two-part series on Point Loma senior guard Jessica Scorza, it's on my site, a new look site. Same look, new look, same website, folks, calamac.wix.com/calamac /calamac sports under the blog section. You can find those two stories, part 1 and part 2, are up for your viewing and reading interest. And if you want to leave some feedback, please do so on those two pieces. And with that, folks, before I do sign out here, I do have to give a shout out and wish the best of luck to the Point Loma Nazarene University, the PLNU Sea Lions women's basketball team, as they play their first game of the NC2A Division II tournament on Friday up in Anchorage, Alaska, against the University of Alaska Anchorage Seawolves on Friday night at 8:30 p.m. So a shout out to Jess and all of her teammates. Best of luck, ladies. Bring home a few wins before you come back home. Get a few dubs before you come back to sunny San Diego. With that, folks, on that note, we will close out of here for the night. We'll see you folks back here hopefully tomorrow night. If not, we'll be back next Wednesday. We'll be back next Wednesday, hopefully, with Sparkling Overseas. We'll update you folks on how these Sparks are doing during the WNBA offseason. With that, folks, until sometime soon, hopefully, please have a safe night. Drive home safely. Thank you all for coming, and good night now. This has been the LA Sparks 365 Network. We are Sparks. We are Sparks. We are LA, and we are the WNBA. For Chris Mancy in Anaheim, Cal McClure and San Diego signing off. See you folks sometime soon, hopefully. And we'll be back sometime soon. We hope. See you folks in a few days, hopefully. Till then, see you then. Bye-bye.